Go see Star Wars The Force Awakens. The little lion has spoken. The little lion has spoken.
Hey everybody! So we're going to be doing the spoiler review of Star Wars The Force Awakens. So this is heavy spoilers. I'm going to be talking in depth about the story, character arcs, things that I found negative and positive, and theories and all that kind of stuff. So don't watch this video if you haven't seen the movie. Go watch the movie, come back, and then watch this video. So I did a spoiler-free review where I talked about my impressions in directing, cinematography, writing, production, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to talk about that since I already did, so go watch that video for all of that stuff. What I will be talking about is the stories, the characters, their arcs, and like I said, negatives and positives and theories. So one of the things, and I've got my notes here because we got a lot to talk about. So don't expect a perfect movie. Like, there's no such thing as a perfect movie. If I had to nitpick, then I would say that the movie moved too fast. There were a couple of parts where things could have slowed down. There were some things that were a little too convenient, but that would really be my only complaint. Maybe some other stuff, but they're tiny compared to the awesomeness that we got in the movie. I mean, come on. I have heard other people say that they didn't explain enough for certain things, and I say that's a good thing. It leaves a mystery for the sequels. If they explained everything in the movie, then there's nothing to look forward to, and it would be a really long movie. You might as well just make the whole trilogy a 9-hour movie and release that. I want a little bit of mystery. I want to know. I want things to be revealed in the next couple of movies. If you want everything explained to you all the time, then go watch the prequels, because that's what they do. They explain everything all the time. Every movie is self-contained, pretty much. Let's see, the plot. Yeah, the plot is very simple, and it mirrors the first Star Wars movie in a broad sense of the unknown lone character on a desert planet, the bad guys having a large planet-destroying base, and the ending of the destruction of that base. And I agree with Chris Stuckman, who is a big reviewer, where he said that a lot of people that complained that the prequels were too different from the original, and now they're complaining that the new movie is too much like the original. It's like, make up your minds. You know, what do you want? Those kind of people will never be pleased. So, you know, I don't really listen to those people's opinions, because nothing that they do is going to make them happy. They should just go make their own movie and release that. But there's two reasons why I don't mind the new Starkiller base. So, one, Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, yeah, it's Han Solo's son. We learned that earlier in the movie, which at first I was like, why are they telling us that already? But then by the end of the movie, it makes total sense. He's obsessed with his grandfather, Darth Vader. He has his helmet, like you saw in the trailer, but he also has his ashes, which you see when he takes his helmet off when he's talking to Rey. And he puts it in the ashes, which is in this big like container, little tray thing. Which I was wondering how he got that, and my thinking is that Luke had all of the ashes in the helmet, and Kylo Ren, when he was Ben Solo, was being trained by Luke at the school that Luke had created, and I think Luke just had that there as his father's ashes. And when Kylo Ren killed everybody and went to the dark side, that he took that. That's my theory. But he's trying to emulate Darth Vader, and as much as he can. So he's wanting to complete what he started, as he said. So it makes total sense that he would want to build a bigger, more powerful base. More powerful than the second Death Star, which could only destroy one planet. This one can destroy 5. And in his mind, that would be the ultimate solution. Because from his point of view, from the Sith point of view, if you fail, it means you're not powerful enough. And it's always been that way. Anakin doesn't feel powerful enough to save Padme, so he goes to the dark side to try and gain as much power as possible to save Padme. The Sith are always trying to gain more power. The Emperor, Palpatine, trying to take over and creating the new Galactic Empire. And the original Star Wars are trying to get rid of the rebels so they can have ultimate power. It's always about the ultimate power. So having a Starkiller base that can kill 5 planets just seems like a logical step that the Sith would go. And a way that Kylo Ren would want to go, since his grandfather, Vader, helped create the first 2 Death Stars. So from that point of view, I understand the reasoning behind it. The other reason is from a writer's point of view. You have 4 major characters. You have 5 minor characters, including BB-8. I put him in a minor character because he's not in it as much. And you have 3 older characters that you have to explain what happened to them in the past 30 years. If you also tried to create a new complicated plan for the New Order, for them to destroy the Republic or other rebels, and somehow fit that into 2 hours, the movie would be so compressed it would get confusing. It wouldn't make much sense. The characterizations of the new characters, the minor characters, and what happened with the older characters is more important to me than the overall plot. Plus, you have to remember, Star Wars is a space opera. It was originally designed to be a space opera, which means that it's dramatic and full of fantasy. And that's how operatic storylines go. That's how they work. You have to have if you're doing a trilogy, you have to have your first, second, and third act. And in the first act, the good guys win in some way. And then in the second act, they lose in some way. And then in the third act, they are able to come back and overcome all of those trials to win at the end. That's just how an opera works. So to be mad that something is too similar to every other opera out there doesn't make any sense. You guys that are complaining about that aren't thinking about it as a fantasy. You want them to be ultra realistic. I mean, they use magic, for God's sakes. It's a fantasy movie. They have lightsabers. They have blasters. This is not supposed to be a realistic science fiction, because it's not a science fiction. It's a fantasy movie. Just like what you would see like Lord of the Rings or whatever. You have to, you have to allow disbelief and take those kind of things at face value, because you are being pulled into a world that doesn't exist. So on to the main characters. Rey. I love her story arc. You know little about the character at first, just that she was left on Jakku as a child and desperately waiting for her family to come back. We follow a lot of the story from her point of view and learn her character along with her. So there's some foreshadowing, but not too much. You're learning about her character as she's learning it. So when I first saw the movie, I thought she learned the Force too quickly. And I've heard other people say that too. But after I've been thinking about it for a while, the scene where Kylo Ren is interrogating her and trying to get the map, and he's like using the Force on her mind to try and extract the map that she saw from BB-8, she started to push back, and it was more of a trauma, like a trigger, that in a way the Force awakened inside her, and she was able to push back and fight back, which surprised Kylo Ren. And in that moment, her her knowledge of the Force was kind of just like turned on. It was snapped through trauma instead of years of slow learning of the Force and training. She was kind of traumatically brought into it. So I can kind of understand that. I mean, it's a little, you have to, again, take the disbelief a little bit to accept that, but it makes more sense to me, especially for the story, because again, if she was slowly learning everything, the movie would be too long, so it's good to give her a quick explanation of how she's able to learn the Force, which would be through a traumatic event. I think this is some time for speculation that Rey is Luke Skywalker's daughter. And he left her on Jakku to protect her, since he had to go into hiding after Kylo Ren killed everybody and is hunting him down. So he didn't want to risk her life while he was trying to avoid being hunted down by the Knights of Ren. I think when she touched the Anakin and Luke's original lightsaber from episodes 4 and 5, when he gets his hand cut off, that lightsaber that falls through Cloud City, that's the one that she touches, that she's getting backflashes of her family, which would be Luke and Anakin. So that's why I think she's Luke's daughter, that she's getting flashes from her family tree. Finn. I'm really happy what they did with Finn's character. He was a very real character, unable to handle the violence of the First Order and desperate to escape. Then when given the chance to get to the Outer Rim, he takes it. Fear pushes him that way. He's desperate to get away. It's the fight or flight, and flight was taking over. But then when he changes his mind because Rey is in danger, I love that the relationship that they had overtook his flight instinct and went into a protective instinct where he wanted to, protect Rey. So I love their relationship, especially in the first half of the movie. That a lot of their interactions were great. I love that. I'm excited to see where Finn goes in the sequels. They leave him on the hospital bed, and you're not really sure where he's going to go. And I'm wondering if they're going to touch on the fact of his parents, because now they don't use clones for the stormtroopers anymore. They just steal children and raise them to be stormtroopers and brainwash them. So since they mentioned it in the movie very quickly, I'm wondering if that's something that's going to crop up in the sequels of who his parents are. I know a lot of people say he's Lando Calrissian's son. I don't know if they'll go that far, but maybe there's something cool with the parent storyline of where they're from and how they're connected to everything. Poe Dameron. He's in the movie a lot less than I expected, but when he's in there, you can feel his presence. Like, he's got a strong presence. He's a very confident character, but not too cocky, which is important. He knows he's awesome without being annoying about it, which is great. I also love how they showed that he was the greatest X-Wing pilot. And they didn't just say it. They didn't just say, oh, he's the greatest X-Wing pilot, and now we have to assume that. Like, you get to see some action sequences where he actually is the greatest X-Wing pilot, especially the one from Finn's point of view, and you see him flying and flipping through the air and killing all of the TIE fighters. And it was a great sequence. I loved that. Every time you see a sequence with him, you just want to pump your fist, and you're like, yeah! Poe! So I would like to see more of Poe in the sequels also. Kylo Ren. I love that he's a complicated character. I was afraid they were going to make him one-dimensional like Darth Vader was in the original Star Wars. If you think back on the original Star Wars, Darth Vader was just the evil guy in a suit. Like, they didn't give his story much of any arc. And I was afraid they were going to do that with Kylo Ren. But he's not. He's very emotional, which the Sith, they're supposed to be very emotional. That's where they get their power from. So when people say he throws tantrums, it's because he's a young Sith and he's using his emotion. So it's not that he's just a whiny brat throwing a tantrum. That's part of his path to the dark side. Luke went through that a little bit. Anakin definitely went through that. Even though those movies were bad, he did have his tantrums. Let's see. So he's so obsessed with his grandfather and the power of the dark side that he has to actually fight the light side that he feels cropping up inside him, which is the total opposite of Darth Vader. Anakin felt the light side and was trying to fight the dark side from coming up, and eventually the dark side took over. So Kylo Ren's going the other direction. He wants the power of the dark side, but he feels that light side coming up, and he's trying to subdue it or eliminate it so that he can fully embrace the dark side. So that's where the conflict between Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, and Han Solo come into play. And that is why, huge spoiler, Han Solo dies. Kylo Ren kills Han Solo. And at first I was a little shocked because, it's Han Solo. But on the other side, that is what Kylo Ren would need to do to eliminate that light side that was coming up because of his feelings for his parents. So we should have seen it coming. Harrison Ford had said in interviews back in 1983 that he thought Han Solo should have died in Return of the Jedi in a selfless act or doing something good. And that reflects what's in this movie. He fought against his original feelings of get away or leave, and instead approached Ben Solo to try and save him, to bring him back to Leia because Leia had asked him to do that. So he fought against his own instincts to try and save his son. And in that good act, he ended up getting killed by Kylo Ren. Although it sucks that Han is dead, I understand why they did it. It makes total sense for the storyline. And this movie is Han Solo and Leia's and Ben Solo's movie for their story arc. If you put Luke in there too much, then it would jumble it. So this movie is more about what happened with Han and Leia for the old characters. The next movie is going to be what happened with Luke. So I'm not disappointed that Luke's not in it. I'm excited to see what happens with Kylo Ren in the sequels because his character is now an unknown. You don't really know what direction he's going to go in or where his character will end up. He's obviously fights the light side. He thinks killing his father would eliminate that, but maybe it could still crop up. And it all kind of depends on the relationship between him and Snook. We don't know much about Snook, so we'll see. I really don't know where that character is going to go, and I kind of like that. I don't know. Gives me something to look forward to. So Han Solo, Chewie, and General Leia. I'm just going to lump them together because their story is very intertwined. I was a little worried that Han and Leia would show up and I would just see the actors and not the characters. And all my fears were silenced as soon as they hit the screen. I've heard other people say that too, but it is very true. As soon as Han said, "We're home," I was sold. I was totally sold. And Leia wasn't in the movie that much, but she was very important to the story between Kylo Ren and Han Solo, making Han go against his better judgment again. So, although she wasn't in it very much, she did have a critical role in the outcome of the movie, which ultimately led to his death. Minor characters. BB-8. I was afraid BB-8 would be a little too cutesy and a poor substitute for R2-D2. I was so wrong. He had some great humor, and it wasn't over the top and distracting. He wasn't as helpful as R2-D2 was. R2-D2 is really the true hero of the first 6 movies. Everybody would have died so many times in those movies if it wasn't for R2-D2. So really, he's the true hero. I'd like to see more of BB-8 in the sequels and maybe be a little bit more active in saving people. Maybe R2-D2 will be more of a character and he continues saving everybody. But I would like to see an interaction between R2-D2, C-3PO, and BB-8. I think that would be a fun little trifecta of humor, you know. We didn't see much of C-3PO either, but the scenes he were in were really good, especially when Han and Leia first met each other and he just like pops into the screen. That made me laugh. I liked that. Supreme Leader Snook. We did not get much from Snook. And when we first saw him, I didn't like the fact that he was a giant. I thought that was a little odd. But I was glad to see it was just a hologram. Thank you. Which, he probably is not a giant, he just has a really giant ego. You know, like the Wizard of Oz. But there's really not much to say about him. Just that he gives us the idea that Kylo Ren is not done with his training. You know, because he says, bring Kylo Ren back to finish his training. Which explains why he's, you know, still new to all this and very emotional and doesn't have much control over it. General Hux. He's a very Hitler-type character that's constantly competing with Kylo Ren for Snook's attention and approval. We don't get much from him either, just a couple of speeches. I feel that his character is there more to give Kylo Ren a little bit more dimension between him and Snook, so that it's not just a one-way relationship, that he's still kind of fighting for approval with Snook also. Maybe we'll see more from him in the future, especially if some of the ways that Kylo Ren's character can go, Hux's character might become more important, but we'll have to see. We just don't have very much. Maz Kanata. One of the major points I thought they should have slowed down was when they hit the cantina. When we met Maz Kanata. I always want to say Katana for some reason. Kanata. When we first see the cantina, the camera moves through way too fast. You can't see the aliens and the cool characters that are in the cantina, and we kind of needed a little slowdown from all the action and story that we got beforehand, and also we needed a little bit more slowdown so that we can catch our breath before the next action sequence. And it wouldn't have added much time, maybe 1 minute of just, you know, slowly going in. We can listen to some of the music and see the cool aliens and the characters and establish the atmosphere, and then we can get to the Maz area, the Maz storyline. She was an interesting character. I love the way she was acted. I'm horrible at pronouncing that actress's name. She's awesome though. But her character, the way that she did her character was good. I thought her character looked a little too cartoony. I would have liked a little bit more realistic, but it wasn't too distracting for me. It was just more like, oh, okay, that's what it is. At least it wasn't like the prequels where everything is blown out of proportion cartoony. So I can live with that. It's fine. She was still an interesting character. And maybe in the future we'll find out how she got a hold of Luke's old lightsaber. You know, maybe she bought it from a trader, or maybe she found it. I don't know. Captain Phasma. That was probably my biggest disappointment of the movie. Not because of Phasma, just that she was really cool looking and hyped up because she was in all the trailers and, you know, she does all of the interviews and stuff like that, but she didn't do much. Like, she was there to be intimidating for a couple of scenes, and then she got captured, turned off the shield, and then put in a trash compactor. I don't know if they turned it on. I'm hoping she's still alive so that we can get some kind of a story out of her in the future movies, because she just wasn't in it. Maybe there was a bunch of stuff that was cut out to save time. Maybe we'll get to see more of her in the Blu-ray release with the special features. That would be nice. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed we didn't get much from her. So I'm hoping for more, because I think she's a cool character. You don't see stormtroopers like that, you know? So my final thoughts. R2-D2 powered up exactly when they needed him to. Yeah, again, it's a fantasy. You have to accept the drama of it, but it was very convenient, and they didn't explain it. So that was, you know, I'll accept it just because it's a fantasy. It's an operatic drama, so stuff like that happens. But it was very convenient. Luke Skywalker is only in the final scene. That's why he's not in any of the trailers. And I'm glad they didn't put him in any of the trailers, because that would be the only scene that he would be in the trailers for. And he's not in the story, so they don't ever talk about Luke, and except that they're looking for him, and then he's in the final scene. And like I said before, the movie is really about Han Solo and Ben Solo and Leia. They're catching up to their storyline. So the next movie is going to be catching up to Luke's storyline. And I'm glad that they split that up, because it would make the movie too jumbled and might get confusing, or some characterization would get lost because you're trying to do too much in one movie. Star Killer Base gets 2 shots. The first shot, they don't show where the power came from, they just fire it. The second shot, you see that they pull all the power from the sun and absorb the sun and contain it, and then use that as the energy for the second shot. But where did the first shot come from? Were they at another star and they absorbed that star and then moved the whole planet to another star? Which, even for a fantasy operatic where you have to disbelieve things or accept that the odd can happen, that's still pretty far-fetched, in that once you start moving the planet, unless it's an dead ice planet, you can't do that. There's life on the planet. As soon as you start moving it, everything dies. So my thinking is the planet never moved, and the first shot was actually the magma core of the planet, and they used that as the energy to expel, to kill the first 5 planets. Then the second shot is they use that empty space to absorb the star and contain it in that area, which would take a lot of technology to contain an entire star in the middle of a planet. But anyway, I can believe that more than moving the planet, and using that energy from the star for the second shot. So hopefully they didn't move the planet. I'm hoping that my idea is right, where they use the magma core for the first shot and then absorb the sun for the second shot. That would make more sense to me. Yeah, so it's good that they didn't go answer everything in one movie. And I know a lot of people are like, where did he get the tri-saber, and why does he have this, and why do people are doing this, and where's Luke been? And it's like, come on, we got 2 more movies, people. They can't answer everything in one movie. Let's take a breather, love the movie we got, because it is an awesome movie, and look forward to finding out stuff in the next movies. Let's leave some mystery for the next 2 movies. To sum up, I love the movie. I think it's the best movie that could have been done for a sequel to the original trilogy. It exceeded all of my expectations, and the positives totally outweigh any of the nitpicking negatives. I'm all on board. I'm going to see it multiple times. I'm there. Abrams, you did a good job. Kathleen Kennedy, Lawrence Kasdan, great job. Loved it. It deserves all of the accolades. So, if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, throw some comments in down below what you thought, and I will see you guys on the next video.